Hi, and welcome back to the Britt Mayer Show, where we talk about culture, politics, faith and health, and the stories that matter most to you and the intersections in all those spheres. Today, I am bringing on my friend, and this is her second time on the show because half of you love her and half of you hate her, and that's why I'm bringing her back, because she is a force to be reckoned with, and I am really, really excited about where this conversation went, especially in light of our last conversation. So I am bringing on Katy Faust. She is the founder of Them Before Us. It's a global movement that defends children's rights to their mother and father. Now, I will say, those of you who hated Katy, I think it's because she is over the target on all of this. She is truly a force in the world of big fertility, big surrogacy, and defending the rights of children to a mother and a father. In this conversation, we are going into the deep end. We are going to discuss how big fertility and big surrogacy is downstream from Obergefell. I know, I don't want you to leave. This is a spicy conversation, but it is so important. It is meaty. We cover some of the big headlines. We're going to dive into the effects of surrogacy and why the Christian position in this can't just be, well, I feel really sad about all those people who can't have babies, and so therefore I want to look another way, and I don't want to really look at those dark corners of IVF and surrogacy. We have to, as ambassadors of Christ, care for the least among us, those little ones, and even the women who are the rented wombs for big surrogacy to be the booming business that it is. Big fertility is something that we need to talk about, and we need to talk about why big fertility is booming and why it's downstream of Obergefell, which is same-sex marriage. So get ready, buckle up. This is an incredible conversation. Wherever you're listening, please subscribe and share this episode, like this episode. It helps us to continue to put these interviews out into the world because we believe people actually need to hear these conversations. So with no further ado, here is my incredible conversation with my friend, Katy Faust. Okay, if you are anything like me, you love yourself a really good candle, but you don't love polluting your home. You certainly don't love the toxins that most candles throw out, and you don't love having a headache even though your house smells really good. So enter resistance candles. I use resistance candles exclusively in my home, in my studio. My producer loves them. I have given these as gifts. Everyone I give them to loves them. We host a church small group, and everyone who comes into my house says, your house smells so good. What is it? Well, it's resistance candles, and you're not going to get a headache. You are going to leave my home feeling great and not wanting an Advil. Not only are they proudly made in America, but they are also inspired by true stories of early American faith and grit. They're ideal for gift giving. You are going to want every single one of their candles because they smell so good. I have burned a couple of these all the way down and can't stop raving about them. Go grab the new Liberty Harvest collection. It's a 6-pack, so you get to experience some of their top scents at resistancecandles.com. Use code ROOTEDWINGS. Katy Faust, my dear friend, I am really excited for this conversation, having you back on. Welcome back. I think the last time we did this was over a year ago, and the people either loved you or hated you. So I was like, why not bring her back on again?
I am a woman that generates strong responses in one direction or the other, but very, very glad to be with you. I do feel like we are building a new media on the right, and some are mega voices like yours, and some are people just saying, I'm going to step out and just tell the truth where I am. But I really do think that we have a possibility of fighting back some of the most devastating forces coming against not just the nation, not just the family, but individual children, because so many people are using their voice and building a platform so that we can bring clarity that will result in courage into some of the most contentious culture war issues we're facing today.
Yeah, well, we're going to jump real deep into the deep end. So I want all my listeners to prepare for this whole conversation. Listen all the way through, because we are not only going to cover headlines, but then we're going to go into the heart of the matter and how we got into this mess that we are going to talk about. And before I give you a soft intro, which we already covered like the bases in the beginning, but I'm going to let you talk a little bit about your past. But I want to just set the stage for why this is so important now and why this is important for Christians to have the language to know how to dialogue about IVF. That's what we are talking about today. And I don't want people to tune out right away and think, oh no, I'm not listening to this. For whatever reason, I already have decided how I plant my flag on this issue, but this is going to challenge your thoughts. And it is so important that in issues such as this, we constantly allow our thoughts and ideas to be challenged. So I really encourage all my listeners to listen all the way through, and then please share this with your pastor. Please, please, please share this with your pastors. We need the church to develop a better language in talking through in vitro fertilization and big surrogacy and its effect on children. So with that, you're a bigot. You are a bigot, Katy Faust, aren't you? We hear that all the time. So talk about why you actually are not a bigot and what your past is.
Yeah, I just might be the OG bigot. I really, because like 15 years ago, I wasn't doing any of this. I was just a stay-at-home mom. My husband was a pastor. We had just come home from China, adopting our youngest child. I have 4. And my life was busy, very, very busy caring for my children, being plugged into my community. And also I am I'm more of a grace giver than a truth teller. So I don't like to do confrontation. I don't like to have hostilities or lose friends or anything like that. But it got to the point, right in 2012, when gay marriage came on the scene as a state level conversation in Washington, because it was on our ballot. And then it moved into being this national conversation, that it was right after President Obama evolved on the topic of marriage.
Yeah, he sure did.
And it was just, to me, within days of him taking this new position, I just felt like there was a sea change in the media, where all of these outlets that used to talk about how, well, here's this conversation we're having about gay marriage and traditional marriage, to, well, now here's the gay marriage people, and they're moral, righteous, and virtuous. And here is the traditional marriage supporters, and they are horrible, evil, bigots, hatred, homophobe, animus-filled, knuckle-dragging rubes. And that was it. It wasn't just a we disagree. It's here's the good side, here's the evil side. And bigotry was the only possible explanation for your support for traditional marriage. So that rubbed me the wrong way for a couple reasons. But one of the main ones is, just like every other Christian, just like every other person that supports traditional marriage, I love my gay family and friends. And I am very open-hearted about that. Case in point, my mother has been in a relationship with her partner since I was 10, since soon after my parents' divorce. So after the divorce, I kind of grew up in these split households, like most divorced kids, part-time with my dad and his partner, new girlfriend or new wife. And then the other half of the time was in the world of my mom and her partner and their lesbian community. And I wasn't a Christian as a kid, so that was just kind of the normal world that I was moving in. So, and they continue to be very important to me. I still love them and see them and drop everything if they come to town and try to get down to see them as much as I can. And they've always been a part of my children's life. So this whole thing about well, you're a bigot if you oppose anything related to the LGBT agenda, it actually is I would say it's been used very effectively against people that have more of a traditional support for things like sex, marriage, gender roles, not wanting your teacher to teach your 3rd grader that boys can wear dresses and things like that. It has been deployed effectively because, especially Christians, we are the most open-hearted, the most loving. And so accusations that we hate people, I would say, hit us the hardest. And so I realized that there was no amount of, I actually do love the people. I'm well, here's my rational response. Well, this is my foundation for understanding why children need a mom and dad. Here's the sociological support. Here's the studies that support all of this. It didn't matter. It did not matter what I said or did. People would say, oh, so you're saying it's bigotry. Oh, so you're a bigot. So you hate gay people. And I just lost it one day. I just was I see how it is. I understand. If I do not support your ever-moving progressive goalposts, there's no way for me to not be a bigot. Is that right? And they were yep, that's right. And I'm now we're going to fight. Now we're fighting. So I started an anonymous blog called Ask the Bigot, because I felt like I had so much to say about why marriage is a matter of justice for children, but then also why the church needs to hold on to grace and truth and not slide into compromise, but not drive away people that disagree. So I just wrote about this in relative obscurity for a couple of years until I was outed by a gay blogger with a much larger platform who doxed the members of my church to try to silence me. And that's kind of how I came out and started doing this publicly.
How did you go from, because we're going to tie into all of this at the end, and that's why people need to listen to this whole conversation, but how did you make the jump from blogging about same-sex marriage, same-sex union, to surrogacy, which is now your focus with them before us.
Yeah. Well, I got into it because what I saw was them advancing the idea of gay marriage on the backs of saying that kids don't need a mom and dad, that kids love having two moms or they love having two dads. And I'm like, hold on. I've worked with kids in some capacity since I was in college. Like my husband and I have been doing ministry. And for me, the dominant part of that has been youth ministry for almost 30 years. So I had never met a child that had lost their mother or father who did not at minimum experience curiosity, but very often it was this lifelong wound, this burden that they carried everywhere they went that impacted their very self-identity and their own self-worth. Like it tanks a kid when their mother or father is gone, especially if that mother or father could have been there if they had done the hard thing. So I got into it because I'm like, this conversation about gay marriage is so adult obsessed. It's forcing children to lose something that they need and that they're made for. But the more that I read and researched, the more I realized everything about marriage and family is adult obsessed. The conversations about divorce are adult obsessed. The conversations about same-sex parenting is adult obsessed. The conversation about adoption can very often be adult obsessed. Well, I want to adopt to complete my family. Or I want to adopt because as a same-sex couple, I have a right to adopt. And that led me into the world of big fertility. I didn't know anything about IVF, 15 years ago. I really hadn't had my eyes open to the world of sperm and egg donation or surrogacy or anything like that. But because I got into this space where I recognized that children don't just need, deserve, and benefit from their mother and father, they have a right to their mother and father. And the redefinition of marriage violated that child right. But so does reproductive technologies. So I said, if I'm going to advance this idea that children have a right to their mother and father, I have to go wherever the threats are. And the cultural threats to children as it relates to their mother and father are very, very strong. We see them communicated in graphic sex ed material. We see it displayed on, Target's Pride mannequins in June. We see it repeated over and over in sitcoms like Love Makes a Family and Kids Don't Need a Mom and Dad. They just need to be safe and loved. We see it in the legal space, in the world of weakening divorce laws and moving towards a no-fault divorce situation. We see it in the redefinition of marriage to say husbands and wives are optional in that project, and therefore mothers and fathers are optional in parenting. We see it in the normalization of polyamory and polygamy in our laws. There's different municipalities that have legitimized and legalized multi-parent arrangements. But we also see it in technology. We see the victimization of children, their right to their mother and father, and their right to life, in questions about IVF, sperm and egg selling, commercial surrogacy. It implicates an awful lot of new technologies that are coming down the pike, whether that is artificial wombs or robot nannies or different processes of using AI in the conception landscape. And so you can look at any marriage and family issue, and I will say adults are running the table when it comes to those conversations. Their desires, identities, fulfillment, sadness, longings, losses, that takes center stage. Child needs, desires, rights, they just have to go on the back burner until the adults get what they want. And if the child has to lose their mother or father or their life in the process so the adult can be fulfilled, that's kind of the way it goes in all these conversations. So I was forced to learn about big fertility because I care about child defense. It required that I, in essence, sort of become an expert on all of
which
these.
you are now. And I would say that gives you have the credentials to speak into what we're going to discuss. And spoiler alert, you're going to connect all these headlines we're going to run through to how this all flows downstream from Obergefell. So that, again, I want to say, don't tune out now. You need to listen to Katy's argument for why Obergefell brought us to the headlines that I am going to cover right now with Katy. So let's jump through some of these. And I just want you to give your thoughts as we kind of go through the current landscape of IVF. So this was interesting. October 10th, 2025, there was a UN special rapporteur report by Reem Al-Salem, and it's a game changer. So this is the first official document that was presented to the UN that equates commercial surrogacy to, quote, modern slavery and, quote, child trafficking. Those aren't my words. This is in the report. It cites exploitation in countries like Ukraine and India, where poor women are, quote, rented wombs. The global surrogacy market hit $14 billion. $14 billion. This is not a nonprofit, sweet, independent thing. This is a multi-billion-dollar organization machine, okay? In 2024, it's projected to reach 27 billion by 2032. That would be on the conservative side. And in this report, it notes that, and I have the report right in front of me, it notes that surrogates are 2 to 3 times higher ranked for PTSD from studies like the 2023 British Fertility Society survey on mental health in assisted reproduction. There are so many in this whole article, and it will be linked below for people to look at, but there are so many statistics on the damage that's caused and brought on to these surrogate women. One of them, too, is that these women have 2.1 times higher postpartum depression, with emerging evidence linking similar trauma responses to PTSD from relinquishment and gestational eviction. There's so much in this that I want to cover, but I'm just going to hit on a couple more things. And then, Katy, I want your thoughts on this. In this report, she says surrogacy reduces women and children, including girls, to mere commodities, stripping them of their equality and dignity and encouraging their exploitation and abuse. She said surrogacy is the result of commodification and commercialization of women's reproductive capacities. It preys on and exploits women, particularly those from marginalized and impoverished backgrounds. Her report, it highlighted physical, psychological, economic, quote, violence, and also called it severe human rights violations. She also said, and this was interesting, it's something that I've wondered for a long time, is that emerging available evidence points to serious risks for children born through surrogacy, including negative physical and mental health and development outcomes resulting from separation at birth from their mothers. Her whole report really stressed that the global network embraces an abolitionist framework that would end demand by penalizing the commissioning of children via surrogacy or its facilitation by intermediaries. And she also called for the decriminalization of surrogate mothers, recognizing them as victims. Katy, I want your thoughts on all this because this is a bombshell report.
Yeah, so Reem is really a pioneer in this. She's getting a lot of that information from the Casablanca Declaration, which is a global organization, a global movement that seeks to ban surrogacy worldwide. I'm one of the founding signatories to that movement, and have been at their conference and very connected to their work, because there is no way to regulate this problem away. You can only ban surrogacy. We already, I get a daily surrogacy alert in my Google alerts, and it'll be like, this celebrity had a surrogate pregnancy, and this country is thinking about relaxing surrogacy regulations, and these people were convicted of a surrogacy trafficking ring, and this mother was rescued from being a victim of trafficking, and these children were just granted parentage by a 70-year-old couple in the UK who commissioned this baby to be born through a surrogate overseas. And it's such a mixed bag, where you've got all of these countries that are pushing and promoting and normalizing surrogacy in the name of helping infertile couples or advancing LGBTQ equality, but in the very same alert, in the very same daily notification, you're getting all of these people that are creating children and using them for the purpose of trafficking. You've got people that are mass producing surrogate born children. I mean, we've got several cases of people that have, a dozen or more children who are all within a year or two of each other. They might be genetically related to the people that took them home, but you're mass producing these children. You've got people that are elderly that are creating children. We already have documented cases of pedophiles that are acquiring children through surrogacy, because unlike adoption, there's no background checks or screening. And so we were all very grateful to hear Reem's recommendation to the United Nations, recognizing this as an offense against women and children globally. It absolutely is. Obviously, you'll get a lot of feminists. There are a lot of feminists who say, no, this is female empowerment, right? This is if a woman consents to use her body this way. It's the same people that say that, sex work is
Right.
legitimate work,
Same
right?
vein.
Yeah. And I'm like, well, you can have that conversation. But here's the problem. There is a party in this process that will never consent, right? Maybe the woman selling her egg is very happy about it. Maybe the woman, if there is a woman, taking the baby home is very happy about it. Maybe the woman renting her body out is very happy about it, even though, like you pointed out, much higher rates of mental and emotional health distress for surrogates after the birth of the baby compared to natural born pregnancies. There is a party who will never and can never consent, and it is the child. That is the party that would never say, yes, I agree to lose my birth mother, maybe also my genetic mother, and maybe go home to a household where there's no maternal love at all. So it is always a violation of the rights of children. Surrogacy is a major problem. A lot of times we think about it as, well, this is a solve for the sweet, infertile, heterosexual couple who can't have a child otherwise. But in the way that surrogacy is practiced, it's much more accurate to say that surrogacy is about on-demand designer babies shipped worldwide. That's really what surrogacy is.
Well, Ream's report is in blatant contrast to what we just saw here in the US. So, October 16th, 2025, President Trump gave a Rose Garden speech, and he pledged $500 million in subsidies for IVF drugs via HHS, and he framed it all as pro-family amid falling birth rates, which is obviously a concern over here in the United States. He's saying there's 1.6 per woman. So, hey, here's a way to boost our falling fertility rates. Let's make IVF more affordable. The Guardian reported that Trump moves to push employers on IVF coverage and lower fertility drug costs. But pro-life side of the conversation obviously erupted and said, what in the world is going on? This is abortion 2.0. We know that 90% of IVF embryos are discarded, frozen, or destroyed. And frozen means frozen in perpetuity. Millions are lost yearly, according to many studies. And obviously, this all clashes with Exodus, declaring sanctity of life as being the heartbeat of God, the creator of life. And here we are creating life to destroy it. Southern Baptist leader Al Mohler, he called this all morally dangerous. And then he clarified, which I found interesting. And I listened to Al Mohler, and I think he's right a lot. Other times he's not. I appreciate his voice, though. I've learned a lot from him. But he clarified on X on October 23rd that he hadn't said that it is a sin for a Christian couple to use IVF. No, no, no. Just that a Christian married couple must do everything to decrease its moral risk. You contrasted all of this that Trump just did with heroes like George Mueller. Is that how we pronounce it? Mueller?
Yeah.
Okay. And Amy Carmichael, who rescued orphans with IVF surrogacy that manufactures kids by severing them from biological parents via donation and redefined parenthood. And then lastly, and then I'll let you go on this because I'm sure you have thoughts on Trump's move with all of this. But emerging data shows, and this, I think the last time you were on, we talked about this, maybe not. This is a series of IVF conversations we've had. But I talked with someone and I said, have there been any studies done on all these kids who are frozen for 30 years and then defrosted? It seems to me something could go wrong with that whole process and what they end up as an adult, like with medical conditions. Is that is there anything that it sets them into, predisposes them into anything? So here's emerging data. It shows that there are risks for freezing and then thawing kids. There was a 2022 Swedish study that found 60% higher cancer risks versus the fresh transfers, plus metabolic issues. And then again, that links up with all the mental issues that we just talked about and touched on. So I want to know, Katy, with all of this in the purview, everything with the UN that we just covered, Trump's move to make IVF even more widespread stateside in America, what are your thoughts on how we clarify all of this? As Christians, how do we find our footing in the middle of all of this?
Yep. The same way that you clarify pretty much every other question that comes across your newsfeed. And that is, you need to elevate child protection above everything else. That is actually what Christians have done all throughout history. You mentioned Amy Carmichael and George Mueller, and they're just two of thousands of Christians that have confronted cultural threats to children in whatever context that country or that century found them in and said, the gospel of Jesus Christ, the realities of Imago Dei, the fact that God said that if we want to enter the kingdom of heaven, we need to become like little children. He told us that anyone that causes one of these little ones to stumble, he will promise cruel and unusual corporate punishment for us. I mean, like, there are such guardrails around children in the Christian religion that it has forced Christians, missionaries, moms and dads, pastors, all throughout the world to dignify and protect children in ways that other religions and the surrounding culture have not. So we need to do the same thing now. We Christians need to take our pro-child ethic, our child protective mandate from God, and bring it into these kinds of questions about marriage and family. So if we're going to do that, how do we think about IVF? Well, IVF victimizes children in 3 different ways. Number 1, it violates their right to life. Number 2, it often violates their right to their mother and father. And number 3, it often violates their right to be born free and not bought and sold. So it violates children's rights because you mentioned 90%. That's probably the number of children that are discarded just without even being implanted. But it's not like they're lost accidentally. They are screened out of existence because they have some kind of perceived genetic abnormality, or maybe they do not make the grade. They grade embryos at 3 to 5 days, and they give them grades A, B, C, and D. And if there's multiple embryos and you're a C or D grade embryo, you will not even make it to the freezer. You will be.
Did you? I'm gonna interrupt you for a second because did you see the new study that just dropped this morning about? It's called Impute PG. It's what you're talking about, but it's even worse. It's Impute PGTA, bringing polygenic embryo prediction to IVF clinics worldwide. Did you see this report that just launched?
No. And so clarify and let me know, is this like the whole embryo screening, or is this like genetic evaluation of the sperm and egg before they are combined?
I think it's even more hyper analyzing than it was previously, and it makes it even more accessible. So it's Alex Strudwick Young. He's a professor or an assistant professor at UCLA Human Genetics, and he's a statistical geneticist. And I just happened to see his post this morning. He is an advisor for Harrisite. And I'll drop this all below. Harrisite, they boast themselves as building the highest quality genetic tests for families. And this was his tweet this morning. This was just a couple hours ago. Alex Strudwick Young said on X, today parents can for the first time access polygenic embryo testing for IQ and many diseases through a routine test, PGTA, done worldwide and in 60% of U.S. IVF cycles. And then read on to learn how. So I was really curious, so I plugged it in just to get a breakdown on what this is. So it's pre-implantation genetic testing for aneuploidy. PGTA. It's like a quality check for embryos during IVF, which we already know. It scans this tiny sample, but then traditional tests only look at a few spots in the DNA. So this is a whole new iteration of the testing where imputation is a computer trick. This is how they explain it, that guesses the full DNA code of these babies that are frozen using the small sample plus known patterns from big genetic databases. It's like they say, it's like filling in a crossword puzzle. And then based on that, they use AI tools to predict the whole the whole genome from just 5 to 10% of the data. And then this apparently catches errors like tiny chromosomal tweaks linked to diseases without needing more embryo cells. And it boosts success rates by picking healthier embryos, reducing a failed pregnancy, and cutting costs over time. And their whole position on this is we can create smarter, healthier, stronger, more beautiful babies if you make enough that we can test them. It's just a new iteration of testing these frozen humans to determine if they are good enough to even have a chance.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So like, we don't have numbers on how many children are created in a laboratory every year and what happens to them, because unlike things like organ donation or unlike things like adoption, there is no federal requirement or database mandating that fertility clinics tell us what they do with these little lives. But we do know that they encourage couples to make as many embryos as possible because they want to be able to screen them out, right? They want to be able to not just do the basic genetic testing to eliminate things like Down syndrome or trisomy 13, but now, like you said, we now have these kind of deluxe tests that can go beyond that.
Yes.
There are entire organizations that will scan your embryo for 900 traits or 1200 traits, and they can do all kinds of things like predisposition to cancers or early baldness. And obviously, you've got metrics now for them saying that they can predict IQ. We know that they can test for eye color. There's some clinics where people aren't even infertile. 90% of the clientele are going just so they can pick the traits of their child, right? This is a designer baby eugenics project. That's what this is. So this is now one of several companies that are offering a complete screening of your 3 to 5 day old baby so that you can, they'll do it in the name of health, right? Or making sure that you have a successful pregnancy. But really what it is, it's just so that you can actually get the designer child that you want in a way that's a lot more efficient from the previous kinds of tests that we have offered. So that's what I'm saying. Like, why do you mass produce these embryos? It is because you want to eliminate a lot of embryos so you can get the baby you want. Our best estimate is that IVF is responsible for probably 4 times the number of little lives being killed every year than abortion is. So if you really believe that life begins at conception, you have a 2-front war on your hand. You have abortion, but IVF by the numbers is the greater threat to kids. Because it makes sense. Like when you've got a woman walking into a Planned Parenthood and you want to sidewalk counsel her, you're trying to save one baby from death. But if you're looking at a couple that's coming out of a fertility clinic, they have 6, 16, 26 embryos that are kind of hanging in the balance. And obviously they're not going to implant 26 embryos. They're going to be lost in the process. Some won't survive, but many of them are just going to be screened out of existence because they're the wrong sex or they have the wrong eye color or because that genetic test came back and maybe it looks like it's not perfectly optimal. So it's just like when you talk about how we need to confront this and look at it, we need to look at it as a matter of child defense. Begin with the fact that this violates children's right to life on a mass scale.
Okay, so to play devil's advocate, I can already hear the comments coming in. And anyone listening who is a Christian who has been through IVF, is currently going through IVF, because statistics show that there will be plenty of those women listening to this, or you're a pastor and you think, I know so many beautiful kids sitting in my congregation that are a part of my church. And so you're saying that what happened was wrong, that that families don't have a right to build their families if they're infertile. Katy, you're such a bigot. You're so awful. How dare you say that what I am doing so that we can have a family is wrong? Maybe we're not going to do this new impute PGTA test. Maybe we're just going to take whatever the Lord gives us when they mix my husband and my things and we get a baby. We're going to just take whatever comes. How dare you? What would your response be?
Well, I would say that the 2 children that are sitting in the front pew, singing Jesus Loves Me, are precious and they're worthy of life, even though they were created in a laboratory. I just wish I could have met their siblings. I just think that all of the children that were created during that batch deserved the same amount of welcome and protection that those 2 living children had. And that's not the case. Our best estimate is that 2 to 3% of lab-made babies are going to be born alive. Like you said, most won't even be implanted. Most will be screened out of existence or frozen forever. But even then, it's a high-risk procedure. Like you said, obviously, every IVF pregnancy is by nature a high-risk pregnancy for the woman and therefore the child as well. Mm-hmm. Then you add additional risks to that, like freezing and thawing and transplanting and implanting, and that increased risks. You add that a lot of the women that are going through this are beyond their prime childbearing years, which is one reason why they often need IVF, because they waited too long to have a child. But I can still empathize. I can empathize with the parents doing that. And for the ones that say, well, I want to go through this, or I am trying to go this in a way that's pro-life, I say, how's that going for you? Does your doctor love it when you say, I don't want to screen these babies? Do they love it when you say, I don't want to mass produce children? The answer is they don't love it. They're going to encourage you to make as many embryos as possible so that you can maximize the conditions that you want to implant the child. I'll tell you one thing. There's really only one thing that fertility clinics are required to share, and it is their live birth rate, it's their success rate, the number of children that are born after a transfer. And so then the clinics will compete against one another based on that. They do not want you implanting a subpar embryo. They don't want you putting in the C or the D grade embryo, because that means there's a possibility your pregnancy is not going to be as successful and it will look bad for them. So I have spoken across the country in person to, at this point, thousands of people at conferences, and everybody says, well, how can I do IVF in a way that is ethical? And I'll say, well, if you don't want to.
Big question.
Yeah, right. Everybody asks. The answer is, you're always only creating the number of embryos you intend to immediately implant. So no child's frozen, because if they get frozen, they often don't come out. And all of you guys that have gone through IVF, you know what I'm talking about. You know it. Because either you know of a friend that still has frozen embryos, but now they're 47 and they don't know what to do, right? Or you yourself got to the point where you're like, oh my goodness, we might get to the point where we have frozen embryos, and that's a burden for me. So you have to immediately implant them. You cannot use somebody else's sperm or egg. You have to only use the sperm and egg of the mother and father. You cannot do any genetic screening or testing, and your clinic will fight you on that because they want you to only use optimal embryos. So, and you have to create the number of children every time prior to an implantation. And most people don't have the money for that. Most only have the money to make 12 embryos or 20 embryos, so they have tons and tons that they can go back to when the first round and the second round and the third round of IVF fails. They don't have the money to make IVF children every single time they want to do a transfer. So that's the scenario. And I say, like, if you want to refrain from violating children's right to life or right to their mother and father and right to actually have a chance at life, so not be frozen, that's the path for you. And it's virtually never done, A, because it's too cost prohibitive, and B, your own doctor and your own clinic will discourage you against it. So now I will have people after a conference that come up to me. I've had 5 so far that have said, that's what we did. We did IVF. We implanted all the embryos. We only used our own egg or sperm. We didn't freeze any kids. And I'll say, are you loaded? Are you so wealthy? And they're like, yes, we are. Yes, we have a lot of money. There is no way. I mean, IVF is expensive, even if you're not wealthy. Even if you are just doing the bargain basement option of creating 20 embryos at a time and then going back to pay for the smaller cost of the transfer. Most people don't have enough money to go through IVF and then do the transfer as well every time.
Even with that, Katy, that's where I want to dig into that. Before we go into the full connection with Obergefell, which I know people are like, wait, where's the connection? We're going to get there. But before we do, I think it's really important because what you are grounding us in is what I hear most often. The Christian pushback with this conversation is what you just said. Well, I would just do single transfers, or I would, like you said, there's 5 and that's all, and we're not testing them. But the reality is that I want you to hit on, even in that, the ethical conundrum that you end up with, because the reality is that of those transfers, we know that most are not going to even make it. So I was going on today and I was just pulling information, and I found this, and I thought it was so interesting because I don't know who this guy is, but he has this picture where he's holding a little a baby in the car seat, that you take out of the hospital. So he's walking out of the hospital, and he posted this on X. He said, it's Zach Struck. He says, 5 years of infertility, 4 IVF transfers, 3 pregnancies, 2 losses, and 1 you. Fatherhood has given me newfound purpose. I have never been happier in my entire life. I would have just glossed over it, but I clicked on it because there were a whole lot of comments, and it was fascinating. And I went down the rabbit hole. I pulled some of those comments. So I want you to hear this for my listeners. Just listen to these comments that came in. Tristan says, I had 3 before 1 transfer actually took. An amazing son I'm so thankful for. Tried the IVF route again, and it didn't work. And so we decided to close that chapter. Jason says, took us 6 years. Our boy was frozen for 3. No regrets. Rusty says, congrats. We are on year 3 of unexplained infertility, 3 natural pregnancies that each resulted in miscarriages, 2 IVF transfers. The first was a twin miscarriage at week 7. The second didn't stick. Going for number 3 next week and hope to join you soon. Jordan said, so freaking thrilled for you, man. My wife and I have done 7 IVF transfers. Couldn't be more blessed or grateful for our 3 boys. Nothing like fatherhood. Happy for you. Eric said, hell yeah. Our 4th IVF for us was a winner too. I know the struggle. Enjoy what you have. I had such, and I'm just going to be honest, because and I'm sorry if I offend you, I was repulsed going through these comments. Everyone's in there sharing their stories of how 4 were lost, 3 were lost, but they've got that one. Hell yeah, let's go. And I just thought, oh my word. Like, where are we at as a society that celebrates this? It's not even like it just goes through the wayside. It's celebrated. Like how many you lost to get that one. Your response, Katy.
Well, I would say that's really a story of how deceptive big fertility is. Look at how many people had to do it 3 and 4 and 7 times before they got one living child. And I look at the 3 or the 4 or the 7 that were attempted, and I'm like, at least those kids got a chance at life. What those people are not saying is that they donated 6 to research, or they have 7 in the freezer that they're not going back for, or that they only implanted the girls because they didn't want the boys. The real tragedy there is the kids that never got the chance, the kids that were weeded out of existence because the genetic screening didn't come back exactly the way that they want. At least in those cases, those babies had a chance at life. It is the 90% of kids that never even know the warmth of their mother's womb. That's where the story is. And then the other story is, people are given this diagnosis of unexplained infertility, and then they're immediately shuffled off to the IVF pipeline. They're told, this is the only way you're ever going to be able to have a biological child. The reality is most people have unexplored infertility because nobody's actually looked at the cause of the infertility, because there's not a lot of money to be made in restoring and healing what is at the root cause of the infertility for him or for her. So if you're listening to this and you are struggling to get pregnant, don't believe this lie that IVF is your only option. There is a branch of the medical world called restorative reproductive medicine. Restorative reproductive medicine. These doctors specialize in identifying and healing the root cause of the infertility issues, so you do not have to rely on a technician, so you don't have to go back for multiple transfers, so you don't have to freeze and store your surplus children. They can heal your body. You can get pregnant on your own, and A, you're healthier at the end of it, and B, it's a lot cheaper, and C, the success rates are higher very often depending on the issue being treated. So I listen to that and I say, big fertility exploits the desperation of these families that want to be mothers and fathers so badly, to the point where they treat their own children as commodities and then subject themselves to these high risk pregnancies that are very often result in failure for the mother and the kids.
And that's the ethical issue that I think, even if you are a sweet Christian family, that you're like, well, we're only implanting what we would take. It's like, yeah, but then you're manufacturing babies that we know have very little chance to actually survive the process and even make it earthside. So you are willingly going into a situation and putting your kids in a situation where you know their chance of survival is so slim. I don't know how you square that ethically as a Christian. That is my response. And I know that's a hard truth, and I don't mean it to hurt feelings, but it's true.
Yeah, there is massive loss of little lives in IVF. And of the 90,000 that are born every year, 1/3 to 2/3 are going to lose their mother or father in the process because they're going to use somebody else's egg or somebody else's sperm or both. So it's like, the big fertility world, it is victimizing children's right to life. It is separating them from their mother and father. And then very often there is payment involved. You're paying somebody to sell their sperm or their egg, or sometimes you're paying somebody for her womb to hand over her parental rights to that child. And this is a complete violation of adoption best practice, where there's prohibitions between the intended parents, the adoptive parents, paying the birth mother or paying the genetic family to relinquish the child. That's called trafficking. But that's the whole world that big fertility is built on. Nobody's donating their eggs. You are selling your eggs. You are purchasing your child's genetic mother. You are purchasing their genetic father. You are paying, in the case of surrogacy, you are paying a woman to preemptively relinquish the child and hand them over to you for payment. So it violates children's right to be born free and not bought and sold as well. And this is actually all very, very clear if you look at big fertility from the perspective of child protection. If you look at any of these situations from the perspective of giving adults what they want, then everything is permissible. But if you're looking at it from the perspective of securing what children need, then hardly any of it is.
Right. Man. Okay, this is the last headline-ish thing that I want to cover, and then we're going to draw the huge connection to Obergefell. So this was posted in, I guess there are forums now, and you're probably way more aware of these than I am, where I had no idea that we are at a stage where people now are quite literally putting on the market their leftover kids. Yeah. So this is one of those posts, and I pulled so many. I'm just going to read one. It says, we have 10 eggs that we are looking for one family. We are asking $9,000 for them. We live in Colorado where the eggs are located. We have 2 boys from IVF and had a lot of eggs. We had a lot of eggs and embryos left over and knew that we wanted to give them to loving families. We have worked with other families and have an attorney and we can get a contract set up pretty quickly. 2 of the families we have worked with in the past, both transferred 2 embryos and both are currently pregnant with twins. The family we choose will have to be open to letting us know if there are any live births so we can let the other families know. But other than that, we are okay to an open or closed relationship. We want whatever the family wants for their children. About me, I have brown hair, brown eyes, medium build, 143 pounds, 5'7". I have a master's degree in forensic psych. I'm part Italian, English, German, and Native American. I don't have any genetic conditions in my family that I am aware of, and I have done all the FDA testing needed as well. Please send me a PM if you are interested in learning more. Hundreds of these. It's like old school Craigslist for selling your frozen babies. Is this where we're at this point too now?
Yes. So that is exactly what big fertility is. I often contrast adoption and the world of IVF and sperm and egg donation. Adoption is an institution centered around the best interest of the child. Not everybody that wants a kid is going to get them, but every child is going to, if the system works the way it should, be placed in a loving, vetted, secure, safe home. Reproductive technologies are a marketplace centered around the desires of adults. There is no, in any contract, not in sperm and egg selling contracts, not in surrogacy contracts, the phrase best interest of the child never appears. There's no background checks. There's no screening for people that take the babies home. The only thing that matters is the check that clears at the bank. If you have the money, you get the baby. There's no regulation around these kinds of transactions. Children in law that are preborn and frozen are treated under property. They are transferred as property. So everything that woman is doing is completely legal. You have the right contact. You have the right lawyer. This is totally legal.
I am shocked.
Modern day child trafficking. Trafficking under the name of progress and family building. It is very, very important that Christians get their priorities straight right now. The victim in these situations is not your sad friend that wants to have a baby. She deserves your empathy and support. The victim are the children who lose their right to life, who are traded on the open market, who are separated from their mother or father, who are placed in risky households or transitioned across borders with who knows what happening to them after that. This is a matter of child protection. It is very important that Christians open their eyes and say, I am going to step into the great cloud of witnesses of Christians who have gone before me and have said, I am willing to piss off culture and even lose some friends because God mandates that I make sure that no little ones are caused to stumble if I can do something about it.
I have chills. That brings us to your whole connection in everything we just discussed. And that's why I wanted to create such a strong backdrop of all the dark corners of the world of big fertility and bring them into the spotlight and the sunshine, because I want you to connect all of this with what you have warned is the Trojan horse, that all of this has been downstream from Obergefell, that Obergefell was the Trojan horse that brought us to all the horrors we just discussed, where you can literally, I'm in shock right now, freeze your babies and sell them like a Craigslist ad, like you would your dirty old piano. I can't. I'm really having a hard time with this. So I want you to talk about ending Obergefell and why there is a connection, because I think people right now are thinking there is no connection. You're talking gay marriage. Let them do what they want to do. That's what we were told. Just let them do what they want to do in their bedroom. How is this all connected? Why did Obergefell spring wide the gates for everything we just talked about? And why must we end Obergefell? Is it possible?
I'm going to give you a very quick hit on this, but if you want the full details with links and receipts, you can go to Them Before Us Substack, and you'll see It's Time to End Gay Marriage, and you'll get this full thing completely explained to you. But here's the deal. Marriage has functioned as the sun at the center of the marriage and family solar system as it relates to laws and how we think about parentage and birth certificates and mothers and fathers and all of that. But what we did with Obergefell is we took out this procreative understanding of marriage that required a man and woman, and we swapped in a definition of marriage that was centered on adult validation. And what they announced in Obergefell, like what Justice Kennedy said in his decision was, same-sex couples have to be afforded the same constellation of benefits that heterosexual couples are afforded. Same-sex couples cannot be treated any differently in law in any way. Now, the problem is that children are considered one of those benefits of marriage, but 2 men and 2 women cannot naturally produce a child. And yet, in some realms now, it's considered discriminatory if they cannot acquire a child. So now the law has had to accomplish what biology prohibits, which is making 2 men or 2 women the parents of a baby. That requires overhauling our entire legal framework as it relates to kids. So what has happened in the last 10 years? Number 1, many places have redefined infertility. It's no longer 12 months of unprotected heterosexual sex that doesn't result in a live birth. Now, a single person or a same-sex couple can be infertile, so the state or the insurance agency will facilitate their IVF treatments, which always means the child loses their mother or father. Now, we have stripped the words mother and father out of parentage laws because it's triggering and it's discriminatory to even suggest that children have a mother and father or should have a mother and father. Now we are creating new pathways for parenthood because historically the way we have recognized parental rights or parental authority over a child is either they were born to you or you went through the extensive background check and screening to adopt them and prove that as much as we can guarantee as a society, you're going to love those children as if they had been born to you. But both of those pathways felt undignifying, discriminatory, unconstitutional to same-sex couples. So we've created new pathways, intent-based parenthood, where if somebody intends to parent the baby and they procure a child through these processes that you and I have just talked about, they've assembled sperm, egg, and womb in the world of big fertility, and they intend to parent the child, and they have a valid contract, the state will now say, you are the parent of this child. And so what we've seen is, I actually did an article about this in First Things. It's called The End of Natural Parenthood. It talks about how we've got all of these laws that used to recognize this pre-political, preeminent relationship between natural parent and child, and all of them have been undone since Obergefell, because now to recognize that there's something special about the biological relationship between parent and child, there's something about that that is completely incompatible with gay marriage. Gay marriage requires the destruction of biology as a category to recognize the parent-child relationship. So even though a lot of these technologies, surrogacy, sperm and egg donation, IVF, existed prior to Obergefell, what Obergefell did is it said, all of these things need to be completely accessible, and we need to redefine our understanding of the family to deliver these child products to gay couples in the name of constitutionality. So it all, like when I say there's cultural, legal, and technological aspects to this conversation, Obergefell is the dominant legal way of framing what's going on right now in marriage and family. Big fertility is the technological aspect, and then obviously we have the cultural commentary like love makes a family, right? Or if the adults are happy, the kids will be happy. All of those work together to, in essence, reduce children to functional accessories for any adult that has the money and means to acquire them. And now that we are in the post-Obergefell world, that's all happening in the name of progress.
So are we going to overturn Obergefell? What can we do? What is your pushback on this? How can people be a part of standing for what is right and not being afraid of being called names?
We are going to overturn Obergefell. I am spearheading the first national coalition to challenge gay marriage. If you want to stay up on that, you can go to endobergefell.com and just put in your name and we'll keep you posted. We've got a website coming out later this year. I have a massive coalition of major conservative organizations and media platforms that are joining forces. We are going to create a judicial strategy to take back legal marriage. We're going to change public opinion so everybody understands that gay marriage results in child victimization and we are going to turn the church into a child-centric fighting force. We're going to create materials for Catholics and Protestant congregations so that they understand that their mandate is child protection, and that requires retaking marriage.
It's time. Katy Faust, I always love having you. You're a force to be reckoned with. I'm so thankful for you. How can people follow along outside of, is it endobergefell.com?
Yeah. Yeah.
Outside of that, how can people find you and find the documentary that is coming soon?
Yeah, so go to thembeforeus.com, subscribe. I think that you can go right there, subscribe. It'll take you to our Substack. Let me equip you. Let me make you a defender of children. Let me open your eyes to how kids are being victimized in the world of marriage and family, which is the foundation of everything. We have a documentary coming out next year called This Is a Child. And if you want the preview, you can look up Katy Faust, This Is a Child, and see the speech I gave a couple years ago that it's based on. You'll get all the information about that when it's out. We'll keep you up on our marriage campaign. We will equip you to have difficult conversations online or in person, but we do need this army of Christians to rise up in the name of child protection. It's what we've always done, and it's more important now than ever.
Oh, well, Katy, I love you. I'm so thankful for you. I'm so glad to link arms with you and share in all the arrows that are going to be coming at us, because praise the Lord, those babies are worth it.
Yep.
And you are on the right side of history. You're a modern William Wilberforce. You really are. So I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful for your work in waking up the church to the realities. For those listening, first step, something very simple that you can do to take action right now is to share this episode with your pastors, with your church friends, with all the mamas in your circles, and say, did you guys have any idea about all of this? That's the way that we wake up and we start to engage culture in all of this. And then the show notes are loaded with information how you can follow Katy. Katy, thank you again so much.
So good to be with you. Thanks for having me.